from KPRC Channel 2, this is Houston Newsmakers with Cambrell Marshall.
Welcome to this special edition of Houston Newsmakers as part of the KPRC Hurricane Flood and Survival Guide programming. We want to do what we can to make sure that you are aware of the safety issues that may be related to flooding in our area. We're here at TransStar, Houston TransStar, where I've asked Harris County Judge Lena Hidalgo and Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner to join me. This whole process is a great relationship. Harris County, the City of Houston, Metro, and TxDOT working to make sure that everyone is brought up to speed. Quite frankly, I hope that you don't spend an awful lot of time here during hurricane season, because that means we're in an emergency circumstance. But thank you both for being here. First, I want to ask you, how have you worked on your relationship, individually and partnership between county and city? Because it's new to you, not so new to you. Your relationship seems to be rather important in this whole process.
Well, it is refreshing to be here without an emergency backdrop. And I think what I hear from everyone, the relationship between the county and the city has never been this strong. And I certainly feel it, Mayor. I appreciate you for your work and your team's work with mine. This issue, flooding, is much bigger than either of us. And so it really takes both of us and all our teams working together. So we're in constant communication. I know the Flood Control District folks meet with Steve Costello and all of the team over there. Very often talk every day, if not every other day. And we've got strong collaborations. Just tomorrow, actually, we were just talking about Commissioner's Court coming up. We will be having on the agenda an agreement to where the county will be looking after open channels that the city that used to have, but the county's better at that. And then the city will be taking care of some of the county's box culverts that the city is better at doing. So really leveraging each other's strengths.
How often do you have communications about these kinds of issues, either it be about channels or just emergency circumstances and how you should react to them?
Well, the departments are meeting almost every week, and sometimes several times a week between the city and the county. I mean, just like we're sitting side by side, we're working side by side together. If you're in the city, you're in the county. And so it benefits all of our constituents that we work very closely together. The relationship is a very good one, a very positive one. And then we both recognize that flooding or storms don't just stop at a geographical limit. You know, it takes a regional approach, and certainly the county is doing a fantastic job in making sure that move forward on the projects that have been identified, and then the city is working very collaboratively with the county in order to get these projects done quickly.
I saw a report, and it may be for both of you, that indicated that as of right now, 95% of infrastructure that might have been damaged during Harvey still had not been repaired. And I saw that and said, wow, that's an amazing number. Is that in fact true? And then what is the challenge on getting those projects sped up, getting that infrastructure repaired as it should be?
I'll take that one because it's about the county's work. So that report was getting at the channels and the bayous that were damaged during Harvey.
Just the channels and bayous.
So the ones that were where there was erosion, for example, because of Hurricane Harvey. It's true that 5% of them have been pretty much complete. The other 95% are close to being done. So by this time next year, they'll all be done. They're in various stages of completion. So it's not like if it's not done, it hasn't been started. They're in progress. And the delays there were federal. Right now, we're working to push those through. It's kind of like when you got a flat tire in your car. The car still runs, but it's not as efficient. Mm-hmm. So right now, some of those channels where there was erosion, they will still convey the water. In fact, some of them, now they're wider, so they'll convey more water. But it's not efficient for the Flood Control District for them to not be entirely in top shape. So the Flood Control District is working on that. Separately, we're moving the bond projects. Over 100 right now actively that we're working on. We are working on figuring out if there's a way to do them faster. So that will be coming to Commissioner's Court as well, is a thorough look at what can we do to do these faster. This gets at people's livelihoods. These gets at people's homes and their anxiety. We are going to be the ones that are in a hurry to tackle this flood challenge. And the truth is, for decades, there was not the commitment that had to be there financially, especially from Commissioner's Court, to fund our flood control infrastructure. Now it's there, and there's also a commitment to understand the issue deeply and think about the smartest, most strategic way to tackle it. But it takes time.
Mayor, go ahead.
And what I would say to you with respect to the damage that was done to our public facilities, for example, we're still waiting on the federal dollars. I think what people have to understand is that we have not received $1 for infrastructure, mitigation infrastructure from the federal government. The hazard mitigation dollars, we've identified key projects from the Kingwood, Inwood detention, detention in the west part of town, regional detention, the North Canal. Those are dollars from the hazard mitigation grant funding. Those dollars have yet to come in. With respect to the $2 billion that we anticipated damage to our public facilities, we're still awaiting those dollars. And then bear in mind that the local match for those projects was just approved by Senate Bill 7 in the legislature. And that's what's done within the last, let's say, couple of weeks, the end of May. So the dollars, the federal dollars for infrastructure projects have yet to arrive. And then we're both expecting about $1 billion each for the county and for the city from HUD for infrastructure mitigation projects. HUD has not yet approved the rules yet. So we're still waiting on that. So that's what people, I know it's hard to believe 2 years after Harvey. I think most people would assume that the dollars are already made available. The only dollars from the federal level that have been made available right now, and that was just recently done, is for housing repair and reconstruction.
If I might add, Mayor, today we're signing a letter together that I know our teams have been working on, pleading with HUD and the Office of Management and Budget to finalize those rules. And the rules are the precursor to us being able to get that $1 billion each.
Absolutely.
Because it's been so long, and that has entirely been OMB and HUD. We at the county have been able to move forward with some of the bond dollars and other HMGP grants, other funds, and that's where I want to invite folks to visit our Harris Thrives website, and we'll share with you what it looks like. But we just launched that. It's out of Ready Harris, and it shows what all the funds are that the county is expecting and where they're all going, where all the projects are, and where the funds are being invested.
It seems to me that you have a job to do to educate the community to know why this is going so slowly.
Absolutely.
Because confidence is not going to be high. We've seen various circumstances in the recent months where we've had heavy rainfall and flooding, and people are wondering what's going on. What more can be done to let people know that these things are in process, but it takes time when their frustration level is very high?
But it doesn't mean that things are not taking place as we wait for the federal dollars. I mean, we've moved, for example, we've changed our building ordinance, so you have to build 2 feet higher above the floodplain. That was effective back on September 1. We have the adopted drainage program. We're moving forward with Build Houston Forward, which is Rebuild Houston, dealing with flooding or drainage as relates to our streets. So we are moving forward on those projects. Project Braze is moving forward. That had been delayed, but we're moving forward. We have more high water rescue assets. There's quite a bit of coordination between the county and the city. Just like Judge said, they're moving forward on those $2.5 billion on those projects. So there are many, many things that are taking place. But we do need people to understand that the big dollars, the federal dollars for infrastructure projects, those dollars have not arrived more than 2 years after Hurricane Harvey. And I know people find that hard to believe, but that's the way the federal government operates.
I was going to talk about this later, but you mentioned it. We'll get back to, remember what you were going to say, and we'll get back to that second. You talked about the building codes and that you have them in place now where you 2 feet higher,
right.
with a 500-year floodplain as opposed to 100. What's in place to make sure that that is being done? That those people who are supposed to do it are doing it. I'm talking about commercial and private.
That's great. When you're going through the permitting process of the City of Houston, we're taking a close look at your plans, and then we have inspectors that are going out to make sure that you're adhering to the rules. So we're making sure that people abide by that. But that's just one element. It takes many, many elements. It's about expanding the channels. It's about building higher. It's about putting in adequate detention. So it's not one thing that would help to mitigate the risk of flooding. There are a compilation of things that need to take place, and then we're working very closely to make sure that as we move forward, we're taking steps that will mitigate the risk of flooding even more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wanted to share, hundreds of millions of dollars of projects taking place. It is a big challenge. We're 50 feet above sea level, and that means we're vulnerable to this. Part of the way we want to tackle this, and that my administration is working on, is first, communicating with the community. And that's why we've launched this site where folks can see all of the projects and also the funds. And there you can see, here's $1 billion that haven't arrived yet, and here's the funds that we do have. Because that's part of that communication. People are rightfully wondering, we heard there was funds available, where are they? So I want folks to be able to see that. The other part of it is really taking a look and understanding the issue more broadly. So our folks have been working, they work really day and night, weekends. I mean, we've brought engineers from all around the country, and somehow it's not enough. I mean, we're trying to move as quickly as possible, so we need them to also take a step back and see the forest for the trees and understand strategically how we're going to tackle this. So they've been tasked with doing that, with really taking a step back and looking at it. Big issues. Yes, we have our own floodplain requirements, which is the building standards for unincorporated areas. And then there is the Harris County Flood Control District criteria. So those get at basically the floodplain standards are to make sure that you yourself are safe. This new home that's going to be built, that it's high enough from the floodplain.
How similar are they?
They're very, very similar. They're pretty much the same. And then the flood control district criteria, those get at making sure that you're not making other people unsafe. And so that we're working on, that's going to come to court next month, but it's basically new detention requirements so that new developments have to build enough detention to offset the possible water that they would displace. And that applies everywhere, everywhere within Harris County, that is, where it directly drains into a county bayou or channel. So there are many tools. It's not an easy challenge. We've seen those rains, they keep coming. But we've got project in all those areas. We are the people that are working on moving them as fast as we can and looking at every other option out there to get this done. It's going to take some time.
Dr. Steve Kleinberg presented his Kinder Institute report. I know both of you were there when he did that, and indicated that a couple of years ago, flooding was really high up on everybody's radar. Within 1 year's time, it dropped from 17% who was saying it was a high priority, now down to about 7%, something like that. Right. What does that tell you in terms of the attitude of the community and your job of making sure people stay focused on what the challenges are with flooding in our community?
Well, if you put it next to, transportation or housing, issues that people interact with truly every day, it's understandable that it's not the first thing that comes to mind. But it's incumbent upon us as leaders to look at the safety of our community, look after each and every resident. And for me, it's the #1 priority. It's safety and our flood resilience. So that's going to continue being a focus for us. The survey is incredibly important and informative. I do think, I'm not sure that it reflects absolute importance of an issue, and this is one that truly gets to the resilience of the region as a whole.
Well, let's put it this way. People in our area, they are highly resilient, okay? And so we bounce back very quickly and we can move forward. Until such time as you flood again, then it's the #1 priority. What we have to do as leaders is that we have to make sure, do everything that we can to make sure that you don't flood again, so that it is not so pressing on your mind. But for the people, for example, in Kingwood that flooded a month ago, I guarantee you for them, it's a #1 priority. And every time, for example, a system comes into the area and people are saying it may be 4, 5, 6, 7 inches of rain and their house could possibly flood, it becomes a #1 priority. Our job is to do everything that we can to mitigate the risk of flooding such that it is not high on your mind anymore. But you have to work on that. We have to work on it. And whether it's at the top of the list or at the bottom of the list, for us, it remains at the top of the list.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Appreciate you for what you do. Hopefully we won't spend a lot more time here this hurricane season.
We hope.
That'll be a good thing, but thank you for your insight and hope people will take note of that. What's the latest on this region's infrastructure as it relates to flood mitigation or prevention? We talked to the experts from Harris County Flood Control and the Army Corps of Engineers. Next. And welcome back to this special edition of Houston Newsmakers, the Hurricane Flood and Survival Guide, where our focus is on a number of things. This time we're talking about the flooding issues that seem to plague our community year after year as we sit in this lovely location overlooking Buffalo Bayou, which is in a tranquil state right now. Joining me to talk about some of these problems, Russ Poppy, the Executive Director of Harris County Flood Control District, and Byron Williams, who's a Chief Project Manager engineer for the Army Corps of Engineers, the Galveston area here. You guys are the guys we need to hear from. And so my question to both of you is, as of right now, what do you think the biggest challenge is in terms of what we're facing in Harris County as far as flooding conditions are concerned?
Sure. That's a great question. And we're faced with accelerating projects across the board now that the bond program funds are available. And we're looking at going what we'd historically done in a year, which is around $60 million. And doing that, if not more, per month in order to get everything we've got in the bond program done within just 10 years. And so we're ramping up internally at the district to do that, but there are some concerns that we have about resources in our region to help keep pace with the work that we are pushing out, primarily with professional services as well as contracting services, the contractors who actually build our work, and the materials. And as a result, we're already seeing in some cases a 2 to 3 time increase in some of our construction costs because of the extra work that we're pushing out. So it is a real phenomenon. We're keeping an eye on it, and we're trying our best to manage the execution of our projects and making sure that the community and the resources are there such that we don't see a continued spike in these prices, because if it does happen, we may not be able to do as much as in the bond program as we'd like to.
Well, that's one of the challenges from your standpoint, from the Corps standpoint. What are the biggest challenges you see?
Very similar to Harris County Flood Control District. We were afforded a great opportunity due to the Bipartisan Budget Act of 2018 that allowed us to be fully funded for federal projects, which is not a normal normal process to say the least.
You're saying that hardly ever happens.
Well, okay, I'll leave it at that. It hardly ever happens.
Okay.
But we were afforded nearly $300 million for Clear Creek, $6 million to study the Buffalo Bayou and Tributary Resiliency Study, which most people will refer to as the Addison Barker feasibility study. And we had to manage our resources to be able to tackle that head on so we can be efficient and actually get to execution as soon as possible, which is what the public and the Corps and Harris County Flood Control District wants.
You're right, everybody wants that. How soon do you think we're going to get to a point where we can be in Harris County and we won't be concerned about flooding? Is that something that's just not going to happen?
Well, we're taking great strides to implement our projects. And if you look at the 238 projects within our bond program, we've already initiated and are making progress in over 60% of those projects. And those projects have a total value of around $3 billion. And so that's active work that we've got going on right now. And we're looking at ways to accelerate that. Recently, Commissioner's Court gave us some additional resources to look at the remaining work that we haven't started yet and figure out what it would take to compress the time schedule on those so we can get as many benefits in the ground as quick as possible.
When we talk about, we've heard a lot about this, quote, third reservoir, the possibility of that. Is that under your jurisdiction in terms of looking into it? Is that the holy grail? Is that going to be the answer to our problems?
The third reservoir is something that will be looked at during the Buffalo Bayou and Tributaries Resiliency Study. It's a measure that we're looking at along with many other alternatives. If it proves to be an efficient alternative, it's something that we will incorporate. If not, it's something that we won't. But it is definitely being looked at in great detail.
In addition to what they're looking at, you mentioned big picture things. We're looking at large diameter, deep tunnels to help convey additional stormwater out towards the bay and beyond.
We're talking about tunnels, third reservoirs, all those kinds of things. I guess there's no point where you're not going to consider anything to help us in terms of mitigating.
That is correct.
And you're working together. What is all of the stuff? You talked about the tunnel thing, but I'm sure that you guys are involved in that process as well.
Right. Well, Harris County Flood Control District is currently working on a big picture tunnel study, which is around $400,000, in which any findings that they come up with that we can utilize in our study, we will incorporate into our alternatives and our measures as far as alleviating flood risk in Houston, in the Houston area.
Is that something that, from your standpoint, that it's feasible as an alternative or something that would add to helping get water from where you don't want it to where you do want it?
Sure, that's the intent. And the intent is to look at our groundwater conditions, our soil stratigraphy, and then the ground, and making sure that what we have here, what we're dealing with, is manageable by the current technology in the construction industry that actually build the tunnel machines. So that's the purpose of the $400,000 study that Byron mentioned. We're going to be looking at that to see if there is a match. And if there is a match, we're going to get some additional funds, hopefully through HUD funding, to help us do the next phase, which would be looking at, okay, if the tunnels are feasible, where's the most efficient routes? How do we actually implement these to bring the most value to our residents?
Can you tell how much rain this area can take before you have to start getting concerned?
It varies depending upon how recently it has rained in the past, because if it's dry, we can get an inch of rain in many cases and not see any appreciable rises within our bayous. But if we have some rainfall that's just recently happened in the last 24 hours and we get another storm after that, that 1 inch of buffer is gone, and almost whatever additional rain we get causes immediate runoff. And so we like to say, if we start seeing an inch of rain in 15 minutes, we know that there's likelihood of street flooding, and we start making residents aware that please be aware, turn around, don't drown, don't go into high water. And anything we're getting up 5, 6, 7 inches in a span of several hours, depending on where you are in the county, could start impacting our channels.
Talking about that, there's development that's going on all the time. What is the challenge with developers for commercial and residential that are popping up, doing what they do, and how do you work together as it relates to setting up the proper locations and development of retention and detention areas for those developments?
So it works hand in hand, our development criteria, to make sure that as these new developments come up, they put in the appropriate mitigation to make sure that whatever increases in impervious cover or how much faster the water runs off, they have to detain and hold that water back on their site before we will let them release that either into a storm sewer that's maintained, for example, by the City of Houston, or into one of our channels. So we're making sure that as new development happens, they're not creating or adversely impacting our existing flooding problems. And on top of that, we're looking at the results of the rainfall study that just made available at the end of the year last year, Atlas 14. And we're now learning that what we had previously been designing for may not have been adequate enough. And for example, we're looking at anywhere from a 4 to 4.5 inch increase in what we were previously designing for our 100-year storm event in a 24-hour period. So we're going from around 12.5 or 13 inches to now somewhere in the 16.5 to as much as 18 inches of rain. And so we're in the process now working with the City of Houston, County Engineers Department, to update all of our criteria at about the same time to reflect the new rainfall rates that we all need to be designing for us on our projects as well as the development community, and then making the necessary adjustments to our minimum detention requirements as well.
Thank you, Russ. Byron, thank you for coming in, talking about this project that a lot of us in this community are looking at as a way to help mitigate all our flooding issues in this community. Final thoughts about the hurricane season and about ways that you can help make your family safe after this. Thank you for watching this special edition of Houston Newsmakers as a part of our KPRC Channel 2 Hurricane Flood and Survival Guide. If you're new to the area, hopefully you've been able to gather some valuable advice on how to keep your family safe in the event of a tropical storm, a hurricane, or a flood. For you veterans of our tropical seasons, you can use this part of the program with our first half hour and use that as a refresher for what you need to know to keep you and your family safe. I want to invite you to go to our Hurricane Headquarters page. That's at click2houston.com/hurricane. You can go to that page and you can download our Hurricane and Flood Survival Guide, which has a great deal of information you can use to prepare for the season ahead. It's on that page where you can see a repeat of this full hour program of this evening. A reminder, Houston Newsmakers, in this present form, you can see this show again on Sunday morning in its regular spot at 10:30. Again, everyone, thank you for joining us, and good night.